Hey guys, Captain Smash, Smash Strength Lab, Ottawa, Ontario. So today's topic is what to do when you're stalled out on your diet. So now look at your diet kind of like your training program. Okay, you wouldn't want to come into the gym and do the same thing over and over and over and over for years or more, right? You're going to get pretty close to the same results after your body is adapted to that. So generally speaking, about after 5 to 6 weeks, your body's plenty well adapted to anything that you've thrown at it, as long as it's had enough time to recover. So you need to change the stimulus a little bit, all right? So now, in most dietary scenarios, we need to change macros. So we're changing the amount of carbs, the amount of protein, and the amount of fat that we're eating. I am a big advocate of not changing the protein hardly at all unless we're actually increasing the protein levels when we're shifting carbohydrates down or when we're shifting fats down. So now there's many different ways to do this, but it's really going to depend on your unique scenario and how you burn calories, right? If you're really a person that carries a large amount of body fat and you're on a protein and fat based weight loss program, that's great. Something like keto or a low carb version, just because your insulin sensitivity tends to be fairly low, this is a great scenario. More oftentimes than not, though, I find that people that are on this plan are consuming too much extra calories, right? They're doing the right thing in consuming, the protein and fats, but they're just eating too much, right? We still have to keep in mind that our overall caloric balance still must be maintained. We still have to be taking in less calories than we're burning. That way we can achieve weight loss. So the big thing there is, okay, once you've satisfied the need to get your body situated so it's burning more fat as a predominant fuel source, and that's all you're eating is proteins and fats and your fibrous vegetables, then start working on your portion sizes and just do this incrementally. Like, you only need like a 200 calorie deficit from what you were currently intaking, which yes is going to require some measuring or some other form of portion control. That way you're not overdoing it and you can kind of really keep track of this. But after you've stalled out on this type of diet, where else do you go? Well, you start looking at your calories and you go, okay, well I can pick away a little bit of this. Okay. Now there's a certain point where I don't like to shift people down, because you get to a certain point towards your resting metabolic rate that you just can't go under. And at this point, it's a different scenario. But until you reach that point, you can keep cutting calories and cutting calories and cutting calories until you get to, your ideal weight goals, okay? Which is generally what you do. Now, the same thing applies if you're on a high carbohydrate, moderate protein, and low fat diet. If you're on that type of diet, you do the same thing. You're going to calculate your calories after you reach a stable weight for a couple weeks, and you're just like, you're not losing any more fat, you're not losing any more weight. Okay, what are we doing? All right, well, let's take away about 200, 250 calories out of the mix and continue along that weight loss progression, excuse me. So now, generally speaking, you'll see trends where you'll kind of do a little bit of a zigzag on the scale or with your measurements. I prefer not to do the scale unless you have somebody that can do a skin caliper test, because that really kind of shows, like, are we really losing fat, or is this water? Is this I had a big sodium-rich meal and now I got a lot of water bloating? Is it time for a cycle, like a woman's menstrual cycle, or is it I had a big meal and I haven't expelled it yet? Have I gone to the bathroom recently? I mean, like, a whole bunch of stuff can attribute to your weight, which is why I try not to use the scale for any sort of measurements unless we're doing an actual body comp with a skin fold caliper, or we're just trying to keep track of our weight at the same time for basic purposes. You just need to remember, hey, that weight doesn't necessarily mean that you've gained or lost fat. It just means, okay, that's your weight for the day, and that's what happened. So, basic end state. What do you do when you stall out on calories? Okay, well, the first thing you need to do is adjust your calories down, or figure out what your intake is at that current point in time, and then just start dialing it back a little bit, okay? Now, I mentioned before that there's a certain set point that you don't want to go below, all right? Now, this is going to be pretty standard for most people because your basal metabolic rate is pretty caloric expensive for most people. I would say most people regardless of their size, do not need to go below 1,000 kilocalories a day. And that's for a person that's about 100 pounds. So if you're a big dude, you're probably, at 200 pounds, you're probably not gonna wanna go below your set point at about 2,000 kilocalories a day. Now, if you're trying to get below 200 kilocalories a day, that's a little different. Remember, our metabolism responds to what we eat and how much overall calories we're intaking. So our bodies are going to adjust down to what we're eating, right? So if you're eating less and you're moving more, you're gonna be burning that off, right? So regardless of whether you're following like a ketogenic diet or a high carb, low fat diet, or any one of the others, they're all based on your caloric intake. So if you're stalled out with it, adjust your caloric intake, okay? If that's not working, then something else is going on, okay? You need to look at your sleep habits, you need to look at your stress levels, perhaps even look at your hormone levels, or just the overall amount of activity that you're doing. I mean, like, there's only two things that you can really control, two things that you can really readily control right now, and it's your intake and how much output you have, how much exercise you're doing. So if you're not doing enough exercise, well, you're not gonna be burning a lot of calories. So either adjust that or adjust those calories down, or do a combination of both. Really depends on how fast you want to lose the weight. So hope this helps. Hope you enjoyed this blog post. Give it a like if you find it useful, and then give it a share if you think somebody else might like to see it. Chat with you soon.